people that are competent at baking security into the work that they do, because they're proud of their work and they want it to be good. And if you tell them that it's not good, if it's not secure, they'll try to make it secure if you're nice. Technology will solve all your problems. How many people have too little technology in their workplace? Anybody? Anybody? Right. What I think is that most people don't have the discipline to build their security right. And so most stuff is they wander from shiny object to shiny object and build things to 50, 60%, configure them about 75%, and then move on to something else, go, this thing doesn't work, and move on to something else. I think that the problem that people have is with process and execution, that most of the security problems that we see aren't because people don't have enough technology, it's because they don't know how to run it. And I would argue or suggest that if you can't do something on a spreadsheet, that you don't need a database or a dashboard or a big data analytics to do it. And that most of the processes that need to get fixed can be documented on a 3x5 card in its little boxes or on the back of a napkin. And you should start there, because if you can't do it on a 3x5 card, how in God's green earth are you going to do it in a multi-table database with big data analytics? So I'm gonna rant about that a little bit more, but yeah, we need more data. So has anybody read Douglas Hubbard's How to Measure Anything book? It's a wonderful book. I couldn't read it once he started getting into Monte Carlo simulations and stuff like that, because I'm not very good at math. But a couple of really interesting things he said is, if I fill this can with marbles of 2 colors, there's something like a 75% chance that the first marble that I draw out will be the majority color out of the can of marbles. And so this whole, I need a bunch of data, I need more samples, is kind of true if you wanted 99% certainty. But if you just wanted to know which direction to pivot in, you can take just a couple samples and have a good idea, like have a pretty good degree of certainty on what the trends are. And so stop wasting your time collecting all this data. You have to store it, you have to protect it, you have to get it. It's expensive, it costs money. You could be doing real work while you're waiting to do that. Then another thing, we don't have a whiteboard, which, how can you have a tech presentation without a whiteboard? But another thing is that 5 data points, another thing that Doug taught me is that 5 data points, that there's an 85% chance that the mean of those of an entire data set will be within the range of those 5 things. So you can, again, you don't need a whole bunch of data to tell which way the wind is blowing. And I would challenge you that if you aren't in a position where you need to know things at a granular level, most of the time you just need like some kind of a ballpark idea. Is this more expensive than this? Is this more dangerous than this? Is this more secure than that? And you don't need a lot of data to get sort of a spidey sense of where you need to be focusing your energy. To this point too, what I've been learning is lately to do patch management stuff, I've been trying to identify low-hanging fruits. And the way that I found I could do that was by slicing things up differently. So you take a spreadsheet of your top 100 missing patches, say, and you start slicing it up. You can slice it up by IP or by site or by operating system, or start slicing it up by, like by application. You look at Apache and see how many of your systems are missing more than one version. Like you can start seeing how many there's like 2 systems that are 80 patches behind on Adobe Acrobat. So you can focus on those and make these quick wins that are really exhilarating, even though they don't mean anything, right? Like statistically, getting rid of 2 machines that are 80 versions of something behind, like doesn't change your FSMA score at all, but it makes people really stoked, like not to see all that noise. And then all of a sudden your top 100 have come down, your 100 criticals have gone down to 85 criticals, and all you've done is patch 2 machines. And that's really gratifying. And if you graph it right, it makes management really impressed too, even though you didn't really do anything. And I found out, I forgot the term, but there's actually a big data word for doing that. And you visualize data as being a cube, and then slicing it up different ways, and you can get different intersections. You know, sort of like that German guy that does that with the quote. What's that?
The Conrad cube?
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, it could be that. I thought it had a, like, it had an Irish name, but yeah. But anyway, the idea, the notion of taking small sets of data and slicing them up and using them in a creative way is a good way to do more with less. Let me have another thing. There's that later. Oh, I love that. With the overkill thing, George W. Bush, my favorite quote of his. I don't have a lot of favorite quotes from George Bush, but this is one of them. When the Afghani war started, he said, "I don't want to spend $2 million to blow up I don't want to use a $2 million missile to blow up a $50 tank." Mm-hmm. And don't do that with your data. If you've got a $50 problem, like invest your resources proportional to the problem you're trying to solve. A lot of people spend a lot of money blowing up $50 tanks. So, who's been hacked? What happened?
Somebody tried to send messages to my friends saying that they were me.
But what happened to you after you got hacked?
I was pissed.
Right, but did anything happen? Did you get so my point here is fix everything now or you'll get hacked, or what? Like what happened the last time you got hacked? This is one of the fundamental problems, I think, of cybersecurity, is that everybody's been hacked and nothing happened. How many, I'm on 3 or 4 of credit monitoring lists right now, TJ Maxx and OMB, the OMB hack. Like that was catastrophic. It just, the world was, and what happened? I mean, the shipping crate thing, I just heard, like, Melissa Hathaway yesterday at this thing I was at was talking about the shipping crate disaster where somebody hacked the shipping crates and Maersk, the biggest shipping crate company in the world, lost 50% of their revenue because Chinese companies were able to take their business because they couldn't ship for 30 days or something while they were getting the hackers out of their systems. But they're not dead, they'll come back. Nothing's happened. So this whole thing about you're gonna get hacked and the sky's gonna fall down, it isn't happening, and everybody kind of knows that. And I'm not saying that it won't happen, and I'm not saying that it can't happen, but I'm saying that most people, it's kind of like how many people smoke cigarettes? You thought you were going to get addicted or die of cancer or something right away, and then you were like, well, Uncle Bill didn't, I mean he did, but not until later, not until after I quit smoking or started smoking. But people talk about these consequences, and when they aren't as immediate and life-changing as they were advertised, then people start to ignore them, and it just becomes this sort of signal noise, and it just irritates people when you talk about it. And I'm not saying that's right, but I'm saying that psychologically, it's a problem because we've cried wolf a lot of times. And a lot of really bad things have happened, way worse things have happened to other people that hopefully will ever happen to you, and kind of nothing happened-ish. So I have this theory of risk management, which is the more, what are those called, adverbs? Or are they, what does it say, someplace I put in, conjunctions. The more conjunctions there are in a sentence, the less risk there is. So if somebody gets into your, like is able to get onto your website, and they can do this, and they can do that, and they can do this, it's not a very big risk. Like, it's a big risk if they can get on your system and execute a command and take over. That's two things. So every one of those steps is a needle that they need to thread. And so just a really sort of trailer park way to do risk management is just to count the ifs and ands in a statement, and you can come up with an idea. And if it takes more than a couple of ifs to explain a problem, then you probably should focus on something that takes less ifs, unless there's a really big then. Like, so the then is the cost, and the if is how hard it is to do. So the more ifs, and the bigger the then, I don't know, it made sense when I wrote it on the slide, maybe. You can throw stuff at me if you want to. But anyway, so basically, like, each conjunction adds a level of difficulty for the attacker, and you really need to look at the balance between the ifs and the consequence and see what, and it's a good way to rank stuff, and it's a good way to communicate things to people, because a lot of people get really panicky about stuff that seems real kind of Ocean's 11 to me. And we need to worry about, like, I'm more worried about smash and grab than I am about, you know, Donald Sutherland coming in down through the skylight with the ninja outfit and suction cups. I don't think that's going to happen very much. Work on multiple issues in parallel. Focus, 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 focus. If you work on 10 things at once and you get them all done 10%, you haven't done anything. You haven't closed any gaps, you haven't done squat. Focus on one thing, get it done, get it to a point where you feel comfortable that you can call it good enough, move on, and this is what I call the principle of the dust line. Anybody swept a floor? No, never. We're IT specialists. But if you had swept a floor, you'd notice that when you do a dustpan, no matter what you do, there's always a little line. So that's the principle of the dust line. And no matter how much you do in security, there's always going to be a dust line. So get it to where the dust line is acceptable, and then work on another big pile of trash. Like, just leave that dust line for now, and you can, and you'll begin to see patterns in the dust lines, and maybe you can sweep them up later by slicing the data a different way, and it'll turn into it'll look like a pile if you slice it the right way. But for now, just get stuff to good enough and move on and get something achieved so you can say that something's done. And I guess that's like an agile, lean kind of principle. Most of this stuff aren't really security ideas, but I think they apply a lot. So anyway, it'll take 10 weeks to get everything to green if you do 10 things at once. And if you do one thing, you can get one thing done a week. And I think the drip, drip, drip method of work is a lot better. People overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can do in a year. And if you just stay slow and steady and incremental, you'll get the work done. I don't know how many times, how many meetings have you sat in arguing about whether something needed to be fixed that would take 15 minutes to fix? And you sit in these meetings for hours and hours and hours, week after week, talking about whether it's even a thing. And all somebody would have to do is log onto their freaking computer and fix the damn thing. And they won't do it. And you end up fighting about it. And just the other day I heard of somebody who was on a call, and they were talking about there was this thing that hadn't been fixed for like a year. And they had 100 things they needed to fix. If they would have fixed one, they were like, well, we don't have time, it's not in our schedule. It's like, dude, if you would have fixed one a day, we would have been done 120 days ago. Like, you're just, like, it's sad. So just focus on something you can fix and fix it. And this is sort of the same thing, the 100% compliance thing, and this is where the whiteboard would come in so handy. But so make incremental progress again. But there's this wonderful Lean Security 101 comic book that I can't recommend enough. It's by this Irish security people in Wisconsin. And he drew this wonderful picture of how, so everybody knows the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. So according to that, you can get most of your projects to 80% on 20% of your budget. So if you took your budget and you split it into 5 pieces and doled out 20% of your budget to 5 IT security projects and got them to 80%, and I have the numbers written down because I don't remember them, but if you visualize a wall and you build a wall that gets to 80% good, then only 20% of your stuff is going to spill over that wall. Then you build another wall that's 20%, only 20% of that's going to fall over. So now you're down to 4%. Yes, you're down to 4%. So then you build another wall and 80% of 4% gets stuck. And you're down to 0.2% or something. But so if you built 80% walls, you'd be to 5 nines. And you'd be there at like 160, 20% budgets. Because it's that last 20% that costs the most. That's a project management principle, is that 80% of your cost goes into getting something, like the costs go up exponentially with every percent you try to get over about 75%. And you may not ever be able to get it really done. So getting stuff done to a point, rather than trying to get it to perfect, and doing more than one thing, getting it good enough, moving on, doing the next thing, getting that good enough. So, and again, using the McDonald's cube, right, the cube idea of identifying solutions that can solve multiple issues at once, like patching stuff, low-hanging fruit, incremental progress. And it took a long time. You need to let teams know and understand yourself that usually whatever mess you've got in security took years and years and years to develop. I mean, it started with somebody having an IBM XT and then starting up a rogue, Volkswagen database or something, and then, migrating it to Oracle One and Novell and all this stuff. And you're not going to go in tomorrow and fix it. If management thinks you are, or you think you are, you're crazy. So just take an incremental approach, drip by drip, fix the problem. Another favorite metaphor is close the door before you start sweeping the floor. So in other words, stop the bleeding and then try to stabilize the patient. If you've got a patching problem, say, then get the machine, instead of going back and fixing the machines that are broken, go and get the patching to work on the machines that aren't broken, and then come in and start backfilling. Because if you don't, go next day forward. And software assurance is a great example of that. You start static code analysis on a team, they've got 10 years of technical debt in their findings, in their software. Don't try to fix that right now. Just say, hey, what I want you to do is to get the discipline to put out secure code now and start taking pride in your work and learning how to fix problems in code. Fix findings, how to fix findings in code. And we'll help you fix findings and get this into your muscle memory so you know how to make good code. And then we'll go back and we'll make the bad code good. And a lot of it will end up cycling through as you're doing that, as you're building that discipline. A lot of those old libraries will cycle through, and there will be new findings. You'll start getting the findings, so you can start working on the technical debt without moving backwards. You can move it. You can kind of start rolling through it. I'm the only one that cares about security. Well, if you put it like that, you probably are. Yeah, I don't want to be your friend either. Let's go eat worms and dirt. But I think everybody cares about security right now. I think that at no time in history have more people, given a slight amount of a dang about security. So we live in the best of all possible worlds right now from a security standpoint. People are paying us mega money. They're like, there's massive shortages. Everybody's being told they should, stop being lawyers and become security experts. When did that ever happen? Or like I met a guy who's an anesthesiologist, and he decided to get into computer security instead. So now he's working on like Internet of Things, like bio-devices security, which is a really amazing talk. I hope I can get him in here. But, we need more documentation. I would argue that one of the biggest things that's holding back, at least in the federal space, as a Fed, one of the things that's holding me back the most from getting my job done is all the paperwork that I have to fill out to do my job, and all the coordination I have to do to get people to fill out the forms that document the job that I did, and then putting it in the SSP and getting it in the database and doing a change resolution to get it done, and all of that is really like a lot of work. And then the Deathless Prose does not lend itself to technical documentation. Sorry to break the news to whoever invented these documents, but diagrams and flowcharts and things like that help. And words just get in the way of good documentation of systems. So try to keep stuff lean. If you can automate it, then that would be great. You could just does anybody remember BS generators? There used to be these like BS generators, and you could like put a topic in, and it would just pull this mumbo jumbo out that was almost coherent. It was just sort of a little it wasn't even AI or even really an algorithm. It would just randomly string prepositions together with big words that were related to a topic. But a lot of these things just read like that. And so, I think documentation should be part of the process and not the product in itself. And like slamming down a telephone book on your boss's desk and going, here's the documentation. Nobody ever looks at it, and when you do, you find that it's out of date because it's too much work to keep up to date, and usually it doesn't. All those words, it's all boilerplate language because nobody actually wrote the thing. It's too long for anybody to actually proofread, so it's just terrible. It's terrible documentation. It doesn't do anybody any good. So, all right, we need more resources. Yeah. So this is the difference between people that do a good job and people that do a not so good job. Everybody needs more resources. Everybody can do more with more. It's the people who do more with less that are the heroes. So do what you can with what you got and quit whining. And if you do a good job with that, people will give you more stuff and people will want to work with you. People will be inspired to help you, and you might not even have to hire more people. You'll just get people that want to be, that volunteer to do this, maybe. All right, so to sum it up, put some skin in the game. I think one of the biggest problems with security, another one of my big beefs, is that I had a teacher once, and I think this goes with security too, who said, if you can't do it, teach it. If you can't teach it, chair the department. And I think that that's really true of a lot of people in security. And there's nothing wrong with not knowing how to do stuff. But the thing is that we can go in there and we can find stuff wrong with what other people are doing, and we have no skin in the game in terms of having to fix it or helping or anything like that. Like we just plop this report and then move on to our next thing. And that's, A, it's not fair, and B, it's not helpful. And so if we want to be successful in this and actually get stuff done and make stuff better, then we need to help make it better instead of just pointing out where it's bad. Everybody's a rock critic, and we need more players and less critics. So again, stop aiming for gotchas. Like, we're not here to like pull one over on somebody or to catch them doing something wrong. We're here to help them make stuff better, help them make it better. Create a collaborative, blame-free environment, culture, and do things, tiny drips, tiny steps, and you'll be amazed at what you can do in a year or 6 months. And it gets easier with every step. The more you run, the faster you run. And I'm going to close with a phrase that I wish I had written, and I wish more I had, that I had actually memorized, but it's worth reading anyway. So it takes, this is Seth Godin, so it takes patience, it takes lack of ego, it takes a willingness to be creative, to try new stuff, to measure what works, and to do it again and again and again and again. And when it works, you know it worked, because it's better. So try to leave things better and be nice. And then I have a big list of books that none of you have heard of probably that have inspired me to think the way that I do about security. The other one? Yeah. The Lean Security comic is fantastic, by the way. You have to give the guy your email address. But it's really, really, really helpful. That's me. So I appreciate everybody who came out. Yes, sir. Question?
Thank you. Can you go back to slide 20? Where you're number 20? I know, obviously between me and you we've had lots of discussions on lots of different topics. So I keyed out on this one specifically. So here's, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit.
As if I did.
If you're good with this, because I know you like doing this. Nobody has enough resources to do everything. That's just the name of the game, no matter what job you're in, no matter what you do. So, in the Fed's perspective, right, for all federal agencies, they're given a budget, and unless they spend that budget, they're not going to get the same budget next year. Right? They always get less money unless they spend the exact portion that they currently have. It's almost like you're saving with your job as well. So if you have a tremendous amount of things to do, you're kind of overworked, you know you're overworked, but you get them done. Well, your boss isn't going to give you more resources to do the job next year. That's the expectation now that you've set. Is that you're this rock star, you know, you work all these hours to get the job done, but you do it. So, you know, it's always, if you're good at your job, you're going to get more work. They're going to come to you. But you're not going to get the appropriate resources to actually have a great quality of life. So that's the devil's advocate that I want to play off of you with this.
All right, so I'll be an even bigger devil's advocate, and I'll say that if you're spending more than 40 hours doing your job, then you're not doing it efficiently. And that if you're not getting better and more efficient as you do your job, then you need to learn how to do that. Because everybody's too busy, and busy's a choice. Like a lot of people will tune into this, I'm too busy, I'm busy. No, you chose to do things in a way that make you, that aren't productive in some way. Like everybody has, you know, from Leonardo da Vinci and to whoever had 168 hours, the same amount of time. Einstein had 168 hours a week. Everybody has 168 hours a week, and they spend it in ways that they choose. And so I would argue that that you should never let people know how hard you work. And you should and you should never work as hard as they think. Like you should, and that's by cheating and finding efficiencies and delegating and not having so many meetings and telling people we're going to do this by email or by chat instead of like tying up a big phone call, for example. And people want that. Like people want this face-to-face thing. They want to waste your time because they feel productive when they're wasting other people's time, I think. But again, I'm being a devil's advocate also. But being busy is a choice, and there's a matter of priorities. And I think that and there's days when I feel like I didn't get anything done, and there's days when I feel like I completely nailed it. And by observing the difference between those days and the differences between the ways that I spend those days, I find that overall my days are gradually getting more productive, and that over time I can get a lot more done with less. And if you're not learning that, then I would challenge you to that's like one of the best skills, like for life, for managing your kids and managing your life and managing your health and managing your career, that's like one of the biggest things you can do is learn how to use your time more effectively. As a devil's advocate, and as somebody who deeply wants you to be more productive.
Very good response.
Any other questions? Or?
Yeah, I had one. I liked what you said about no finding without the fix, and that if I look at things from the 3-line of defense model, where you have the business process people that are doing the work, developing the code or whatever, then you have the assurance people that are putting in the patches or checking on what they're doing, and then finally you have the audit as the 3rd line of defense. How would your advice play in, say, a financial service that really works with that 3-line of defense model, and the board relies on the audit committee to tell them what's really going on, and when they're really screwed up, they need the audit committee to give them, they need the internal audit to give them the accurate information. Let the heads roll where they may, chips fall where they may.
Well, so I'm not familiar with the financial audit, and I think I'm talking more about internal sort of continuous monitoring type of audit, like team audits. An external audit.
Second line stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But so the 3rd line, I mean, that absolutely has to be impartial, and that's the test.
Yeah.
So where I would suggest putting them, like where security adds a value, where the internal auditors add value though, is by making sure, rather than dinging the people, dinging their friends and family. It's like a family in a way. Like, I mean, you help dad stop drinking, but you don't go to grandma's house and tell dad's a drunk. That's probably too personal.
Grandma's the board of directors, you do go to grandma's
right,
house.
but